Today we have another Hidden Gems video for you. Today we're going to be covering defensive ends. I debated on doing all of the defensive line in one video, and you could even include edge rushers in this video, so technically speaking I could have done defensive ends and outside linebackers, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to talk about the Madden position defensive end, just because that's the easiest way to classify it. Some of these guys are going to be run stuffers, some of these guys are going to be pass rushers, some of these guys you can use differently, you can develop into what you want them to be. But my standards for which players I pick pretty much remain the same, in that most of these guys are going to be younger guys that you can mold and you can get for a cheap price and you can mold into a starter or a superstar on your team. So we're going to cover right ends and left ends in this video. We have quite a few players, but all of them are good selections for one reason or another, and I will give you guys examples why. Now, the first player that we're going to talk about is Wright and Sam Hubbard. You can get him off of the Cincinnati Bengals. And the reason he's a hidden gem, and the reason that I say that he should be on this list, is because he's actually the backup to Carl Lawson. He doesn't start on that defensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. However, he comes in with star potential, to my knowledge, if they haven't changed it to this point. So he has star potential, and he's actually a pretty good player. He's not particularly strong or not particularly fast or anything like that, so he's not a physical freak. That's not what you're going to get him for. You're going to get him for the fact that he has star potential. He's only 24 years old, and his other attributes are pretty good. So if we go over and look at his finesse move, he actually has a pretty good finesse move and decent block shedding. For a 75 overall, this is a guy that I would feel comfortable putting out there on the field, and if I use him as one of my pass rushers, I'd feel comfortable that he can get to the quarterback from time to time, and over time I can develop him into a better starter. Now, he also has really good size at 6'5", 265, and so that's something worth mentioning for him there, that's one of his better stats. Now, we're going to go on to BJ Hill. BJ Hill is much more of a run stuffer. You could move him to D-tackle, and I'll show you guys why here in a second when I move back to the right side of the screen, but I want to talk about their moves and their block sheds before I go back over there because it takes so long to scroll. But BJ Hill is a backup defensive lineman for the Giants. He starts out at about a 70, I don't know, we'll go back over and look at it in a second, but he starts out with 79 block shed, which is phenomenal for this low of a defensive lineman. I've personally used him before. I've gotten him up to a mid-80s player within a couple seasons, and he turns out to be a really effective run stuffer for me, and you can even get him to be an effective pass rusher if developed correctly. So BJ Hill off the Giants is another good one. Enke Mdj is another one that I like a lot, and this one isn't for any specific reason in terms of his stats. What you see, he doesn't have good block shed, doesn't have good finesse or power move, really doesn't have any good stats whatsoever except for some of his physical abilities, but the thing with Enke Mdj is he was a first-round pick, so whenever he initially came into Madden did that thing where they code the players to play well. Even if they're not a very good player, they play well. There are certain players in the game, as I've said in multiple videos before, that just play better than what their overall is, and Enke Mdj is one of those players. He was drafted, he was a high-end prospect, should have been a superstar in the league, but has had problems, and so they coded him into the game to be a good player, and they just haven't removed that. And so even though his stats aren't very good, he plays very well, and he's young, so you can develop him into a good player for you. Likewise with Eli Harold, you will see that he doesn't have very good moves, doesn't have very good block shed, but he plays really well. He's another guy that had a high pedigree, should have been a very good player in the league, but turned out not to be that great. But his specific redeeming quality is that he is super fast and athletic for a defensive end. So if you really want to get a good pass rush with your defensive end, with somebody that is also capable to hold up against offensive linemen, Eli Harold is that perfect guy for you. While he is still 25 years old and only a 69 overall, he has 85 speed and 81 strength, which is good enough to get to the quarterback quickly and good enough to hold up against a offensive lineman. So that's why he's on this list. He's not the best player, but physically speaking, he can do what needs to be done, and if you can manage to develop him, you could turn him into a good starter for you, or even a good rotational backup. Now, Robert Enke Mdj, just to show you his speed, strength, and everything, decent speed at 77 speed, but 82 strength, which is good enough. And then BJ Hill is the one that I wanted to show you from before that had that really good block shed for a low-rated player. He starts out with 87 strength, so you can move him inside to D-tackle, you can play him at the end, you can play him pretty much anywhere you want to, and you can develop him into whatever you want. He's only 23 years old, so this is one of the better players on the list. Definitely keep your eye out for BJ Hill. If there's somebody that's the Giants, try and trade for this guy. He's a hidden gem. Not a lot of people realize how good he is. He's one of the better defensive linemen actually in the game when it comes to his overall abilities, especially whenever you start to develop him. Now we move on to the left end position where we have a couple extra players here. A couple lower end players just to help round out the list with these lower overalls that you can get for cheap. And I don't know specifically where all of these players were. I believe a few of them, like Casey Sales and Chad Thomas, I believe they are free agents, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I know that Vic Beasley is from the Atlanta Falcons. Willie Henry, I don't know if he's on a team. I think he's a free agent in Madden currently. But the reason that Willie Henry is on this list is because he's a guy that also has decent pedigree. He's 25 years old, so he's got room to develop. But he's got 86 strength, which is really significant for a player of this overall. And then we go ahead and look at his power and finesse moves. He's got 80 power move, which is the highest out of anybody on this list. And that's just the simple fact of it, is that he has 80 power move, and he plays like he has 80 power move. He can get off blocks and get to the quarterback without much problem. Vic Beasley is another one of these guys that doesn't have good moves. He's got decent finesse moves, not very good block shed, but he's just a physical freak, and he's the oldest player on this list, coming in at 27 years old, but he's got 87 speed, he's got 84 strength, and he's got 85 agility, so he's an absolute physical freak. And if you want somebody that can get to the quarterback in a split second, Vic Beasley's your guy. Definitely pick him up in your league because people will undervalue him. You know, if there's a person that's the Falcons, they're going to be like, 27-year-old Vic Beasley, he's only 75 years old, he can't get much better. Don't buy into that. Definitely try and trade for that guy because Vic Beasley can be a 20-sack player for you if you use him correctly. He might get dominated in the run game because of his bad block shedding, but he can hold up decently well because he's got 84 strength to combine with his 87 speed. He's a very athletic player. 89 acceleration, which means he's going to get to the point of contact very quickly. Don't underestimate the power of Vic Beasley in Madden 20. Now we're going to talk about some of these lower overall players. Sheriff Finch. I don't even know if I said that correctly, but he's out of Temple. He's another one that has good physical attributes, and he's a quick player to get to the quarterback. He's got 84 speed and 77 strength. He doesn't have the best block shedding or finesse move or anything like that, but being that he's 23 years old and he's fast, if you rush him off the edge correctly, you can get him a bunch of sacks, you can get his overall up quickly, get him a lot of experience, and you should have no problem developing this guy into a very good player for you. Like I said, I think this guy's a free agent. He might be on a team. Just look it up on Google. You'll be able to figure out what team he's on pretty quickly. The next one is Chad Thomas, another guy that I've used personally, and the reason being is that I like his well-rounded physical attributes. While he has the 84 strength, he also boasts 81 speed, which is, high end for a defensive end. Not a lot of defensive ends have above 80 speed, and that's what you'll notice on this list is that a lot of these hidden gems have above 80 speed, and that's what their advantage is. That's why these guys can do well. They can get to the quarterback quickly, especially if they're a free rusher. They can get to the quarterback without the quarterback escaping or throwing the ball away. Chad Thomas is another one of those guys, very much like Finch, in that he is 23 years old and he has the physical attributes to do what you need him to do. Doesn't have very good power moves or finesse moves or anything like that, but you can develop that if you use him correctly and get him the right amount of XP. You could turn him into a good starter for you. The next one is another guy like BJ Hill that is a fairly good run stopper. Casey Sales, I believe, is a free agent. He's 23 years old. He's got 87 strength, which is really nice to have as a defensive end because most defensive ends are going to be lower than that. And he starts off with 68 block shed, which is, not horrible. It's kind of like right in the average for players on this list. So this is a guy that's young enough that, you can put him in there and he'll eat up space. You can maybe move him to D tackle if you wanted to. You're probably not going to make this guy into a superstar, but just the fact that he has that good strength rating and the good acceleration rating, the 81, he should play decently well for you. I've used him a couple different times, and I've never had an issue with him. And I've even gotten him up into the 70s, and he's been a good rotational defensive lineman for me. But I wouldn't expect him to be much more than that. Now, the final player on this list is Quinton Ball, and Quinton Bell, sorry. You can already suspect why he's on this list. He is mini Vic Beasley Jr. Look at his speed. He's 23 years old. He's got 88 speed and 90 acceleration. I don't even care about the rest of his stats. If I have a defensive lineman that has 88 speed and 90 acceleration, I'm playing him as an edge rusher, and he's going to have a ton of sacks for me just by being able to get out and around the offensive tackles without them being agile enough to block him. So Quinton Ball, definitely pick him up. Try and develop him into a good player for you. He is a rookie, so I don't know what team he's on or if he's a undrafted free agent or what's going on with him, but super athletic, and really honestly he has respectable run stopping abilities. He's got 75 strength, which is not the best for a defensive lineman, but it's definitely not the worst I've seen. There are some really good pass rushers in the league that have really low strength ratings. We could probably go through and show you guys some of those guys. Now, like a guy like Carlos Dunlap, one of the better pass rushers for the Bengals in a while, only has 79 strength rating. So, and he plays pretty well in Madden. So you don't need a super high strength rating to do well. It's definitely preferred because then you can stand up well in the run game. But aside from that fact, these guys are the guys that you guys are going to want to look for in order to beef up your D-lines. If you're looking for some hidden gems, look for these guys. The top ones on my list are definitely going to be BJ Hill, Sam Hubbard, probably as well Quinton Bell, and Vic Beasley. These guys are absolute monsters, and you can turn them into really good players for you. So go out there, get yourself these guys. If this does help you guys out in some way, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel here if you're new, and comment down below what you guys want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a good one.